Imagine being one of the most beloved comedians in television history, making millions laugh every single week. And yet there's one episode from your legendary show that you absolutely refuse to watch, even after nearly 50 years. An episode so emotionally raw, so painful, that crew members broke down in tears during filming. An episode that left the studio audience in stunned silence instead of their usual laughter. For Carol Burnett, now 92 years old, that episode aired on February 12, 1977, and she's never been able to watch it since. The sketch was called The Gong Show, and what happened that night revealed something deeply personal about America's favorite funny woman. This is the story of the performance that broke Carol Burnett's heart. To understand why this particular episode hit Carol Burnett so hard, we need to go back to the beginning. Born on April 26, 1933 in San Antonio, Texas, Carol Creighton Burnett didn't have the fairy tale childhood you might expect from someone who would become television royalty. In fact, her early years were marked by poverty, dysfunction, and heartbreak that would echo throughout her entire life. Both of Carol's parents were alcoholics. Her father, Joseph Thomas Burnett, was a movie theater manager, and her mother, Ina Louise, worked as a publicity writer for movie studios. But their dreams of Hollywood success were drowned in bottles of alcohol, and by the late 1930s, they had divorced. Young Carol was left in the care of her grandmother, Mabel Eudora White, whom she affectionately called Nanny. The three of them lived in a tiny one-room apartment in a boarding house just a block from Hollywood Boulevard. Carol slept on the couch until she was 21 years old while Nanny slept on a Murphy bed. Their monthly rent was $35, and they survived on welfare during the Great Depression. Carol later recalled that she thought there were only two kinds of people in the world, us and the people in the movies. But here's the thing that saved Carol Burnett. Despite the poverty, despite the dysfunction, despite watching her parents slowly destroy themselves with alcohol, she was loved. Nanny adored her granddaughter and made her feel like the most important person in the world. Every week, they would go to the movies together, and young Carol would lose herself in the glamour and happiness she saw on screen. Those movies planted a seed that would eventually bloom into one of the greatest careers in television history. When Carol finished high school, she dreamed of going to UCLA, but the family couldn't afford the $43 tuition. Then, mysteriously, a $50 bill appeared in their mailbox. To this day, Carol doesn't know who sent it, but that anonymous gift changed her life. She enrolled at UCLA, initially studying journalism before switching to theater arts. Her talent was undeniable, and she quickly became a campus star. But getting to New York and Broadway seemed impossible until fate intervened again. After a performance at a professor's home in 1954, a wealthy couple in the audience gave Carol and her boyfriend each a $1,000 grant to pursue their dreams. It was an interest-free loan with one condition. If they ever made it big, they had to help someone else the same way. Carol moved to New York and began the hard climb to stardom. She performed in nightclubs, did guest spots on television, and eventually landed a recurring role on The Gary Moore Show from 1959 to 1962, winning her first Emmy Award. She created memorable characters, including a put-upon cleaning woman who became her signature alter ego. In 1959, she starred on Broadway in Once Upon a Mattress, earning a Tony nomination and cementing her status as a rising star. By 1967, Carol Burnett had her own show, The Carol Burnett Show, which would run for 11 glorious seasons and win 25 Emmy Awards. Every week, millions of Americans tuned in to watch Carol and her incredible ensemble cast, including Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, Tim Conway, and Lyle Waggoner, perform sketches, musical numbers, and movie parodies. The show became a cultural phenomenon, and Carol Burnett became America's sweetheart. Starting in the 1973 to 1974 season, The Carol Burnett Show introduced a recurring series of sketches called The Family. These weren't your typical comedy bits filled with one-liners and pratfalls. Instead, they were darkly comic portraits of a deeply dysfunctional working-class family that hit a little too close to home for many viewers, and especially for Carol herself. In these sketches, Carol played Eunice Harper Higgins, a bitter, frustrated woman trapped in a loveless marriage to her dim-witted husband, Ed, played brilliantly by Harvey Korman. But the real tension came from Eunice's relationship with her mother, Thelma Harper, or Mama, portrayed by Vicki Lawrence with cutting precision. Mama was cruel, manipulative, and passive-aggressive, constantly undermining Eunice's dreams and belittling her at every turn. The sketches were uncomfortable to watch because they felt so real. Eunice would start out hopeful, almost childlike in her enthusiasm about something, and Mama would systematically tear her down with devastating comments disguised as concern or humor. Eunice would explode in rage, screaming her famous catchphrase, "Old lady, this time you've gone too far," before dissolving into tears of frustration. There were no laugh lines, just raw human emotion played out in a dingy living room set. Carol later admitted that she poured a lot of her own mother into the character of Eunice. Her mother, Ina Louise, had always been filled with if-onlys and I could haves. There was this constant philosophy of blaming circumstances, of dreams deferred and opportunities missed. Carol remembered her mother telling her, "You can always write, no matter what you look like." Even decades later, Carol wrote in her memoir, "God, that hurt." The family sketches resonated with audiences because so many people recognized their own families in these characters, the constant bickering, the old resentments that never quite healed, the way families could tear each other down while still claiming to love each other. It was comedy, yes, but it was comedy with a sharp, painful edge. Critics began to complain that the sketches were becoming more disturbing than amusing as the series progressed. The humor was there, but so was genuine pathos. Carol loved playing Eunice because there were no jokes in it. It was just human truth, uncomfortable and unvarnished. She was drawing on her own childhood, her own pain, her own experiences of watching her mother struggle with disappointment and addiction. Over the years, the family sketches appeared 31 times on The Carol Burnett Show, and later on a short-lived series called Carol Burnett and Company. The sketches were so popular that they eventually spawned a 1982 television movie called Eunice, and then a sitcom called Mama's Family that ran from 1983 to 1990. But there was one family sketch that stood out from all the others, one that cut so deep that even Carol Burnett, who lived and breathed these characters, couldn't bear to watch it again. On February 12, 1977, The Carol Burnett Show aired its 19th episode of Season 10, titled 80 Gourmet, Eunice Higgins, on The Gong Show. The episode featured guest star Heidi Gourmet and included several sketches, including one where Eunice Harper prepares for what she believes will be her big break, an appearance as a contestant on The Gong Show. For those who don't remember, The Gong Show was a wildly popular amateur talent competition hosted by Chuck Barris. Contestants would perform their acts while 3 celebrity judges watched, and if the judges thought the act was terrible, they could bang a giant gong to stop the performance. It was often silly, sometimes cruel, but always entertaining. In the sketch, Eunice is convinced this is her moment. After years of dreaming, after years of being put down by her mother and trapped in her dead-end life, she's finally going to show everyone what she can do. She's going to sing Feelings, the famous Morris Albert song from 1974. This is going to be her chance to prove she's somebody. But of course, nothing goes smoothly in the Harper household. Eunice and Ed and Mama bicker endlessly about what clothes Eunice should wear for her big television appearance. Mama undercuts Eunice at every turn, making snide comments about her appearance and her chances of success. The familiar pattern plays out. Eunice gets excited, Mama tears her down, Eunice explodes in anger and hurt. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Eunice takes the stage on the Gong Show set, which was recreated perfectly for the sketch, complete with the 3 celebrity judges, Jamie Farr, JP, Morgan, and Alan Ludden, the beloved host of Password. Chuck Barris himself appeared as the host. Eunice begins to sing Feelings in her own unique off-key way, pouring her heart into every note. And then it happens. One of the judges hits the gong. The harsh metallic sound cuts through Eunice's performance, cutting through her dreams, cutting through everything. The audience is supposed to be laughing, but many of them aren't. Eunice's face crumbles. The camera pulls in tight on Carol's face, and what we see there isn't comedy anymore. It's real, raw pain. It's every dream deferred, every hope crushed, every moment of childhood disappointment playing across her features. Carol Burnett later said the sketch was so sad that they received fan mail saying it made people cry. "It was a heavy piece," she admitted. Crew members were reportedly in tears during filming. Even the seasoned cast members struggled to keep their composure. Harvey Korman, who had worked with Carol for years and seen her do it all, was visibly affected by the performance. What made this sketch different from all the other family sketches was that Carol wasn't just acting. She was channeling something deeply personal, something that went beyond Eunice Harper and straight to the heart of Carol Burnett's own pain. The sketch wasn't about making people laugh anymore. It was about showing the tragedy of broken dreams, of people who never get their moment in the spotlight, of families that destroy each other with thoughtless cruelty. And Carol Burnett has never watched it since. Nearly 50 years later, she still refuses. She's called it too real, too painful, and too personal. For a woman who built her career on making people laugh, who could watch herself in countless sketches and movies and shows, this one 20-minute segment remains off limits. It's the episode that broke her. So why did this particular sketch affect Carol Burnett so deeply? Why this one, out of all the family sketches, out of all the emotional performances she gave over her 11 years on television? The answer lies in Carol's own life, in the pain she had carried since childhood, and the new pain that would come in the years ahead. When Carol performed that Gong Show sketch in 1977, she was drawing on very real experiences of disappointment and dreams crushed by circumstances beyond her control. She had watched her mother struggle with alcoholism and unfulfilled ambitions. Her mother had dreams of being a writer, of being somebody, but those dreams were drowned in bottles and lost in a haze of if-onlys. Carol saw herself in Eunice's desperate need for validation, for someone to say, yes, you matter. Yes, you're talented. Yes, you deserve to be here. But there was something else, something even darker on the horizon that Carol couldn't have known about in 1977. Her daughter, Carrie Hamilton, born in December 1963, would soon begin a painful struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. The same demons that had destroyed Carol's parents were coming for her daughter. Carrie got into drugs as a teenager, and Carol had to make the hardest decision of her life. She had to practice tough love. She had to let her daughter hate her. You have to love them enough to let them hate you, Carol would later say. It took 3 trips to rehab before Carrie finally got clean at 17. In that third rehab, a doctor asked Carrie what she wanted to be, and she said, "I want to be Janis Joplin." The doctor's response was simple. Well, she's dead. That brutal truth saved Carrie's life. She got sober and stayed sober for the rest of her life, except for one brief relapse at 17. Carol and Carrie became incredibly close, working together on television projects and eventually collaborating on a play called Hollywood Arms, based on Carol's memoir. They were, as Carol said, joined at the hip for a while there. And then, in 2001, Carrie was diagnosed with lung cancer. It spread to her brain. On January 20th, 2002, at just 38 years old, Carrie Hamilton died of pneumonia as a complication of the cancer. Carol Burnett had to bury her daughter. "I think of her every day," Carol said years later. "She never leaves me. I just feel her." When Carrie died, Carol didn't want to get out of bed for a while, but she had a play to finish, the play she and Carrie had started together. She owed it to Carrie, and she owed it to director Hal Prince. When that play, Hollywood Arms, was about to debut, Carol got signs that Carrie was still with her. In her hotel room, there was a bouquet of birds of paradise, Carrie's favorite flower, the one she had tattooed on her shoulder. At dinner, the maitre d' brought a bottle of champagne labeled Louise, which was Carrie's middle name, and it rained on opening night. Carol and Carrie had both been nuts for the rain. Looking back at that Gong Show sketch from 1977, you can see why Carol can't watch it. It's not just about Eunice Harper having her dreams crushed on national television. It's about every time Carol watched her mother's dreams slip away. It's about the fear she would later feel watching her daughter slide into addiction. It's about the universal human experience of wanting to be seen, to be valued, to matter, and being told in 1,000 different ways that you're not good enough. Eunice's pain was Carol's pain, and that makes it too hard to watch. Despite that pain, or perhaps because of it, Carol Burnett has built an extraordinary legacy. The Carol Burnett Show ran for 11 seasons and won 25 Emmy Awards. Carol herself has won 7 Primetime Emmy Awards over her career, along with 7 Golden Globe Awards, a Grammy Award, a Tony Award nomination, and countless other honors. In 2005, President George W. Bush awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one of the nation's highest civilian honors. In 2013, she received the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor at the Kennedy Center, with Tina Fey saying, I fell in love with sketch comedy watching your show, and you proved sketch comedy is a good place for women. In 2019, the Golden Globes created an entirely new award in her honor, the Carol Burnett Award for Career Achievement in Television. She was naturally the first recipient. At 90 years old, NBC aired a special called Carol Burnett, 90 Years of Laughter. Pulse Love celebrating her incredible contributions to entertainment, and she's still working. In 2024, at 91 years old, Carol was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series for her role in Apple TV Plus' Palm Royale, making her the oldest woman ever nominated for an acting Emmy in a comedy. Her 25th Emmy nomination. Her career has spanned 8 decades, and she shows no signs of stopping. Carol has also become an advocate for families dealing with addiction, drawing on her own painful experiences. She's been open about her parents' alcoholism, about Carrie's struggles and recovery, and about the importance of tough love and setting boundaries. She's helped countless families understand that addiction isn't their fault, and that they can't cure it, but they can survive it. The Carol Burnett Show remains in syndication, introducing new generations to Carol's genius for physical comedy, her incredible singing voice, her gift for impersonation, and her willingness to look absolutely ridiculous if it got a laugh. The show's movie parodies, like the famous Gone with the Wind sketch, where Carol wore a dress made from curtains complete with the curtain rod, are still studied in comedy classes today. But perhaps Carol's greatest legacy is showing that you can survive pain and still bring joy to others, that you can carry sadness and still make people laugh, that you don't have to choose between being funny and being real. The story of Carol Burnett and the Gong Show episode teaches us several profound lessons about art, pain, and the human experience. First, the best comedy often comes from a place of pain. Carol's ability to make millions laugh came directly from her painful childhood, from watching her parents struggle, from feeling overlooked and undervalued. She transformed that pain into something beautiful and healing. The laughter she gave to others was a gift born from her own tears. Second, sometimes our art reveals more about us than we intend. Carol created the Eunice character to explore dysfunction and disappointment, but in doing so, she exposed her own wounds. That Gong Show sketch hit too close to home because it was home. It was every dream deferred, every moment of feeling not good enough, crystallized in one devastating performance. Third, you can be successful by every external measure and still carry pain. Carol Burnett was already a massive star in 1977. She had her own show, multiple Emmy Awards, millions of fans. But success doesn't heal childhood wounds. It doesn't erase the memory of your mother's disappointment or your father's addiction. The little girl who slept on a couch in a one-room apartment was still there inside the famous comedian. Fourth, tough love is sometimes the most important kind of love. Carol's willingness to let her daughter hate her in order to save her from addiction took incredible strength. It would have been easier to be the friend, to enable, to avoid conflict. But true love means making hard choices, even when they break your heart. And finally, we never fully escape our past. We carry it with us, for better and worse. Carol's childhood shaped her art, informed her characters, and gave her the empathy to connect with millions of viewers who saw their own families in the family sketches. Her pain became her superpower, even when it hurt. Today, at 92 years old, Carol Burnett continues to be a beloved figure in entertainment. She still makes occasional appearances, still connects with audiences, still brings that special blend of warmth and humor that made her a star. But somewhere in the archives, there's a videotape of a February 1977 episode of The Carol Burnett Show that she's never rewatched. That episode, with Eunice singing Feelings on The Gong Show, represents something important about art and life. It shows us that even our heroes carry pain, that even the people who make us laugh the hardest sometimes need to cry. It reminds us that behind every great performance is a human being, with a human heart that has known sorrow. Carol Burnett's refusal to watch that episode isn't an act of denial. It's not weakness. It's simply an acknowledgement that some moments in our lives are too raw, too real, too personal to revisit, no matter how much time passes. And that's okay. We all have our own Gong Show episodes, our own moments we'd rather not replay. But here's the beautiful thing. Carol didn't let that pain stop her. She kept performing. She kept creating. She kept making people laugh. She faced the tragedy of losing her daughter and somehow found the strength to finish their play together. She turned a childhood of poverty and dysfunction into a career that brought joy to millions. That's the real lesson of Carol Burnett's story. Not that we should avoid pain or pretend it doesn't exist, but that we can acknowledge it, honor it, and still choose to create something beautiful. We can be broken and whole at the same time. We can laugh and cry in the same breath. So what do you think? Have you ever had a moment in your own life that was too painful to revisit? Do you think Carol should try to watch that episode after all these years? Or is it healthier to let some wounds stay covered? What's your favorite Carol Burnett memory? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going about this incredible woman and the legacy she's built. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Carol Burnett's life and career, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the people and moments that shaped entertainment history. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Carol Burnett once said, "Only I can change my life. No one can do it for me." She lived that truth, transforming pain into laughter, heartbreak into art, and a difficult childhood into an extraordinary legacy. And nearly 50 years after that fateful Gong Show episode, she's still teaching us how to find joy even when life tries to gong us off the stage. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is keep singing, even when we're afraid the gong might sound.